Interior, Shima's room, night. The lit candles attached to the walls generate flickering shadows and cast a warm glow over the room. Shima shivers violently underneath her covers in her bed. Shima keeps chattering, may I have another blanket, Ashura? Ashura places another blanket over Shima, who snuggles into it. Shima continued, thank you. Shima adopts a troubled look. Shima continued, I don't know if I can do this. Maybe someone else would be better as I have been chosen. Ashura pauses in her cleaning and looks at Shima from the corner of her eye. Ashura, there can be no one else. Only one future vessel can exist at a time. You're all we have. Shima, oh. Shima's brow furrows and Ashura is tense.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Tori Bissonette, editor at For Page and Screen magazine. This installment for our 2024 summer interview series, I'm here with Ramona Gore, author of Heaven's Chosen, which you can find in our 4th issue. Thank you for being here, Ramona.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah, our whole editorial team was very intrigued when the screenplay first came in as a submission. We were all very interested in what's going on here. Can you tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind what you wrote?
I guess it came from how a lot of time with chosen ones they enter this whole new world without understanding how anything operates and then they're
Mhm.
fumbling their way through along with the audience. And then when you look at it from the point of view of the people who grew up in the world, it can be troubling. They're supposed to trust this outsider, to have their best interests at heart, or even be able to trust that this person can complete a very important quest just because this higher being says so. I imagine it'd be hard to trust them, especially when that person has done nothing to prove that they have that kind of capability. So this thought process led me to write Heaven's Chosen from the perspective of someone in that situation. Ashura is supposed to blindly believe that Shima can handle the responsibility of being the chosen one. Her close proximity to the girl has her come to the conclusion that Shima doesn't have it in her.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting about it's unnerving for both the person on the inside and the outside. Everyone's kind of unsettled by the whole situation.
Yeah, as I was writing scripts, I became very sympathetic to Shima because I'm like, oh, you're also in this very terrible situation. You're going to lose all your humanity. You're just going to become this walking body for a god. And meanwhile,
Right.
yeah, and Shiro thinks she's doing the right thing because she's like, yeah, if you don't do this, we're all going to be doomed. So it's a terrible situation for everyone.
Yeah, there's no winning involved for anyone here.
Yeah.
Are these themes stuff you've worked with before, like this genre, or is this kind of new and experimental for you?
Um, I feel like I do try to subvert the genre a lot, kind of be like, here's the situation, here's how it will play from someone else rather than the conventional route. So
Okay.
I feel like I like to do that a lot, take okay, this is how I would how I think someone else would respond to the situation.
hmm Yeah, I love that. It's definitely not what you expect at first glance. Like when you read this piece, it kind of goes in some different directions. So I love that. Okay, so talking about writing more generally and specifically doing screenwriting, what kind of drew you to this? And is this something, do you want to stick with screenwriting? Do you branch out at all into other forms of writing?
Yeah, I do a lot of short stories. I've done a few poems, but I'm definitely not good at poems. I feel like I always am so factual as poems, and people are like, "No, you need to have all this emotion." I'm like, "Oh no, I'm telling it like a story." um,
Right.
but what drew me to screenwriting was that it gave me an opportunity to work in animation because growing up, I just loved watching cartoons. I spent so much time watching cartoons, and it was such a source of comfort for me too growing up. So I'm like, okay, I just want to make a career out of this. I want to keep doing what I love forever. So at first I
Absolutely.
focused on the art aspects, saying I would become a character designer, oh, I get to design all these really cool characters. But then as I started getting more into writing, it just made more sense for me to be a screenwriter.
hmm Yeah, I saw in your little author bio that you were interested in doing screenwriting for children's animation. Is that still kind of the goal for you?
Yeah, that's still definitely the goal, just trying to break in there.
Yeah, it can definitely be difficult, but that sounds like it'd be really like rewarding for you.
Yeah.
So what are you working on now? Do you have any updates you want to share? Are you doing mostly like screenwriting for kind of children's pieces or anything new coming out?
Um, I do this short story that's been kind of in development for a while. It's one of my longer short story pieces, so it's like kind of just struggling to figure out how to like connect everything. But
Hmm.
basically kind of the log line, I guess, would be that this like young 7-year-old orphan girl, she has the ability to see into the distant future. Like ever since birth, she's been able to see these visions of what's going to happen to people. And it's like
Hmm.
these specific people too. And like it's kind of been just like, oh, this is crazy. Why? Like she's like, I'm 7 years old. What am I supposed to do with this?
Right.
But but then when she actually like um meets someone from like her vision, she realizes, oh, this is a real people who are going to be affected by these things. So she decides to do the very impossible task of trying to like rewrite people's future by getting involved.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I see what you were saying about the kind of like subversion of genre there, because I feel like normally they decide to like not get involved or like having it be someone so young, who doesn't really know how to handle all this. Like that's kind of not what you typically see. That sounds very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, so it's a lot of the main character being like, I'm 7, why am I doing this? But she's very like empathetic. She's like, I've been seeing these visions for so long that I feel close to the people. And now that I
Hmm.
know, like, yeah, they're out there, I need to do something.
Right. No, yeah, that sounds very exciting. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about your writing process, like for Heaven's Chosen, but also kind of in general and on what you're working on now?
My writing process is very like mixed bag, I feel like it's Heaven's Chosen. I've had this like idea in the back of my mind for like years. And then I took like a screenwriting course and they're like, oh yeah, like for your first project, I want you to just write whatever you want. And I'm like, oh, I can finally just write about the story. So I just like was able to write out so much quickly. But then and yeah, that's usually how my writing process goes. Like I'll just have a single scene in mind, be like, oh, I want to like develop this further. But then
Hmm.
sometimes when I try to make it longer, I'm like, oh, I don't have all the scenes in mind. So I'm just kind of like
Yeah.
trying to fill it in as I go along.
Yeah, like build those like connections between what you've got in mind.
Yeah.
Do you spend a lot of time like kind of in more of like a drafty stage, or do you like a lot of heavy revision?
While I'm like with short stories as I'm writing, I'm just like totally just like adding all these comments to my writing, and be like, oh, I don't know if this was good, or maybe I should write this.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, so when I go to my beta editor, like my editor, I'm like, okay, so basically respond to all my comments because that's what everything that needs to be fixed.
Right. Do you
So
have like friends who do the editing for you or?
I actually met someone online. I was just kind of like, hey, does anyone want to edit my stories? And they're like, oh, I'll do it. So just ever since then, I've always gone to them to edit my stories.
Nice. It's nice that that like became a like a genuine working relationship.
Yeah, it's funny too. Like I'm like so consistently sending them stuff. So one time I
Mhm.
like took a few months to send something. They're like, "What happened? What's wrong?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I just kind of got stuck."
Right. Do you have any like go-tos when you get stuck? Like any like the dreaded writer's block, like anything you do to kind of shake that up?
Uh, I kind of like change like go to a different story and like kind of focus
Mhm.
on that. Because as I'm writing, I eventually like I kind of realized, oh, I could have done this for this story. Just kind of like switching
Right.
tactics helps me realize what I could have done differently.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And definitely like for myself, like having projects that are kind of some are more like intense, like in action or emotion, and then some that are a little lighter. Like sometimes you need to kind of balance it out. Like it can be hard sticking with one project for quite a while.
Yeah, because then it just kind of drains you. You're like kind of like, oh, I spent all this energy here. Like, what do I do?
Yep, yeah. Do you ever sometimes when people like finish a piece and they kind of don't like it for a while and they have to like set it aside, but sometimes you finish and you just feel like really excited about it? Like how is it for you when you kind of have finished what you think is like a polished draft?
Um, I just kind of feel very relieved. I'm like, I can finally done with this. I'm like, I'm at a place where I'm satisfied. I can just like submit it now. I'm like done.
Yeah. Nice, nice. Okay. Do you have any advice for other writers or specifically for other screenwriters? Anything you wish someone had told you?
Um, okay, so when I was first starting out, like with literary journals, I kind of just thought like, okay, the prestige matters so much more to getting all my work out. So I spent so much money applying to all these writing contests, and I just never won a single one because I was like so new. This was like my first foray into the literary world. So I like
Mhm.
did not win any. I'm like, oh, I kind of wish I had like just started submitting to journals first before attempting contests and spending all that money. So I guess like kind of be satisfied first with just being published before like wanting your name in like winner number one.
Mhm. Yeah, it's definitely easy to accidentally kind of spend a lot of money on like submissions and stuff. And so you have to like strike that balance because I know some of them can be pretty expensive. I did the same thing when I first started. I submitted to like all these contests that had like pretty hefty entry fees and like didn't win anything. And it was like, okay, I kind of regret that.
Yeah.
All right. I don't have any more questions, but like, is there anything you wanted to talk about specifically about this piece or just kind of your writing in general? Anything you want to get out there?
I guess just like keep writing. That's like kind of my best advice for people.
Hmm.
Um, you just see yourself improve so much as you begin to write, and even as you just like read other people's writing, kind of like develop like your own writing style because you're like, oh, I like this part, and I like this part of someone else, and you just kind of cobble it all together and create your own like writing that you'll be proud of. So like even though sometimes you'll be like, oh, I don't want to like write every day, sometimes just doing a little bit really helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you're saying about like cobbling together your own voice because I feel like when people first start writing, you feel like you don't have a voice or you're like just imitating or something, but the more you write, the more you kind of like find your path as like this amalgamation of the influences of like what you read. So I love that. And yeah, absolutely writing every day or all the time, reading as much as you can. That's like the most solid advice you can give. Like I wholeheartedly support all of that.
Yeah, like I feel like everyone gives that advice, but it's so true.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people who do creative writing programs, the biggest benefit is just like forcing yourself to write really frequently because like you get better just by like the nature of doing it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the only other kind of question that comes to mind is about like your characters a little bit. Is there anything like do you draw from kind of like your personal life or like your own experiences, like particularly with the two main characters and Heaven's Chosen, or like do they just kind of come to you already complete? Do you have to develop them? How do they come about?
Well, with like Ashura, I kind of imagined her like, well, I definitely imagined her as this very like harsh person. Like she's very like hard on Shima. She's just like, why aren't you doing better? Why aren't you doing better? So like when
Mhm.
I was imagining her character, it was very like just an angry person, like who's like just kind of angry at the world because she's like, I have to deal with this person who's just going to do my all.
Right.
Um, but also I guess that she was made a little bit out of spite because like you kind of like put so much on the chosen one, expecting to fix everything. So then like Ashura's kind of like spiteful, kind of be like, why are you like this?
Right.
And then Shima, um, I kind of based her off this other character, like who was very like meek. There was like this, I remember watching this like TV show where this character was very meek, but as the story, like as the show went along, she kind of gained confidence and kind of lived up to her like role of being the protagonist. But
Mhm.
Shima, like I kind of like she's very early stage. She's just right in the beginning of the story, so she wouldn't have gone undergone any other development. So she's just very meek. She's like a pushover. She's like, I don't know what I'm doing here. So it's
Right.
just yeah, so it's like they're kind of like Ashura and Shima are just very much at odds in characters. Like it's more like push from Ashura's side onto Shima, and like Shima doesn't like respond at all.
Hmm. Yeah, I really liked kind of the push-pull of the way they interact throughout the story. And I won't give any spoilers because you should all go check it out on our website. But like where they started, I kind of was like, are they gonna, become besties? Are they not? Like, how is this gonna play out? Because they're both kind of sympathetic, like how we were talking earlier. You understand both of them are in these difficult positions. So the way you set them up was really interesting to read because they have such different characterizations, but they're also both like sympathetic people.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how they both have these doom endings, but Masa, he just kind of gets off the hook. He kind of like
Yes, what's up with that?
yeah, because like he's even the one to kind of like push Ashura to like do this final like mission, to this
Hmm.
kind of suicide mission, and he's just like, okay, I'm going to go distract them. But the way it's set up, like Masa could easily just never get any blame for anything, because like his
Right.
distraction could just be like dumping someone over, like pushing over a bunch of pots and pans or something. Like he doesn't. It's not explicit that he was involved in that.
Hmm.
So it's just like these two girls just have these doomed ending, and he just continues on with his life.
Yeah, and the interaction between him and Ashura like tells you so much about her characterization that she's like you just go off like you're not even that involved, even though he's kind of like I can and she's like no. So yeah, that was really interesting.
Yeah, because like Ashura, I feel like she just has a lot of like honor and pride because she like grew up in this society, like this religious
Mhm.
society, because so she takes everything very much to heart, and she like it takes a lot of pride in her role. So she's like, okay, if I'm gonna go against this religious organization, I have to own up to it because this is very much like bad.
Mhm. Did you draw on any particular like religions or cults or anything, or was it kind of just like something of your own making?
um, I kind of drew a bit on like um Shintoism, because with Shintoism they do kind of have that kind of like with the rituals too. I kind of drew on that with like the whole like pouring the water over her, like that is a ritual that's been done with in that religion. And then just the whole like vessel thing, that's part of it. Like there has been that kind of idea, so I kind of
Okay.
drew on that. I didn't try to not make it too close because I want to make it a bit big of a religion. So
Mhm.
yeah, I had my own rituals too, but yeah, there was a lot of Shintoism like in it.
Okay. I think you succeeded because like it doesn't feel like you need to, go do research or something. Like it feels like its own kind of self-contained thing. But that's really interesting. Okay, well, do you have any final comments or anything else you would like to share?
I guess just write for fun. That's just sometimes the first step, because I feel like there are a lot of people being like so serious. So instead of like, I'm going to write this epic novel. And I'm like, no, start
Mhm.
very small. Just like write this goofy story that makes you happy. Just like try to find you like take that first step and find your writing.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes when you're writing, there's pressure to be like, is this like serious enough? Is it like literary? Is it, whatever? But that can be such a barrier to actually doing the writing. So like just have fun with it. That's so true.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing your advice and talking with us about your process. We really appreciate you making the time to sit down and talk with us.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun talking to you.